Hello and welcome to Realpolitik Confidential episode 14. I'm your host Alex Krishan and today it is the 7th of August 2025. Today's episode is titled Eastern Europe on Edge, NATO's New Forward Front. Once upon a time, Eastern Europe was a buffer zone, a grey space between empires, a margin for maneuver, a question mark on the map. That is no longer the case. Today that buffer has become a blade, and NATO is sharpening it. In the year 2025, Romania and Poland are no longer passive border states. They are NATO's hardened fist pressed against the arc of Russian revisionism. The Black Sea is no longer just a naval theater, it's a tripwire. Poland isn't merely buying tanks, it's building a wall of steel. And across the region, roads once meant for commerce now quietly wait to carry troops, tanks and missiles eastward at a moment's notice. What we're witnessing is not merely military preparedness, it is transformation, a tectonic shift in how the alliance sees its edges, not as a buffer to absorb shocks, but as a launchpad for deterrence, a place where F-35s patrol, battle groups rotate, and spending is no longer counted in billions, but in resolve. This is the new front line, and in today's episode we break it down piece by piece. From Romania's Black Sea doctrine to Poland's tank-heavy posture, from pipeline logistics to drone incursions over Lithuania, we'll walk you through the facts, the budgets, the deployments, and the messages they send. Because this isn't just about Eastern Europe anymore. It's about whether deterrence in the 21st century means being present or being prepared to punch. Let us begin with our first segment on Romania's Black Sea doctrine. Let's start where the waves meet the wire. On the Black Sea coast of Romania, where NATO's quiet commitment has now become a combat command. A combat command. In the heart of Transylvania, far from Dracula and closer to doctrine, NATO's multinational core Southeast, headquartered in Sibiu, has become fully operational. As of late 2023, this core-level command can lead up to 5 divisions in the defense of Romania and Bulgaria. Its mandate? Swift, decisive coordination on the southeastern flank. The budget? 350 million euros. The staff? 17 nations worth of military minds. The mission? Simple yet absolute. Hold the line. Romanian General Dragoș Dumitru Jacob put it bluntly. We are prepared to defend the territory of Romania and Bulgaria with weapon in hand. This is no longer symbolic posturing. The Sibiu Corps is integrated into NATO's war-fighting core structure, capable of commanding entire theaters. It is the strategic backbone of NATO's presence in the Black Sea basin. And in an age of drone swarms and flashpoint crisis, it offers something more valuable than diplomacy. But core commands don't hold the line alone. The duty falls to boots and tanks on the ground. Enter Mission Aigle. Since 2022, this French-led NATO battle group has been stationed in Romania. Now in 2025, it rotates through Cincu, Mihail Gogolnicianu and Capo Media. Over 1,500 soldiers from France, Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg. In late 2024, Spain joined the mission. In early 2025, the battle group reached full operational status, equipped with Leclerc tanks, air defense units and armored support. By mid-year, is expected to scale up to brigade strength, around 4,000 personnel. This is not token deployment. It's the most powerful multinational force Romania has hosted since joining NATO in 2004, and its presence sends a clear signal across the sea to Sevastopol. The southeastern flank is fortified. But NATO's plans are not just about who is stationed where. They're also about what Romania is becoming. Since 2022, Romania has pushed its defense spending to 2.5% of GDP, which is well above NATO's long-standing 2% threshold. The result? One of the most aggressive modernization drives in Central and Eastern Europe, with 54 M1A2 Abrams tanks, which are worth $1 billion, are on order from the United States. Deliveries to start in 2026. You also have 54 K9 Thunder 155mm howitzers from South Korea, which will begin arriving by 2027 with licensed domestic production to follow. You have 32 F-35A Lightning II stealth fighters, Romania's largest ever aviation acquisition on the way. Deliveries are set to begin in 2031 and they're set to be fully operational by 2034. You have new HIMARS rocket systems. You have interoperable C4ISR systems, integration into NATO's air and missile defense architecture. In less than a decade, Romania is transforming from a donor state to a frontline force. A Black Sea bastion armed with Western steel and NATO doctrine. This isn't just militarily, it's strategic geography put at work. Romania borders the Ukraine to the north, Moldova to the east, and lies across the sea from Russian-occupied Crimea. It hosts key NATO logistics corridors, rail lines, pipelines, and runways, vital for reinforcement and supply. In many ways, Romania is the hinge between the Balkans and the Black Sea, and between defensive posture and forward power projection. But there's more to this than just weapons. Hybrid warfare enters the scene as well, because defense is no longer just about tanks and jets. Because not all threats, after all, arrive on steel threads anymore. Some slip in through Facebook, Telegram, TikTok, and local news. Russia's hybrid war against Romania is escalating. According to Chatham House, Moscow is actively targeting Romanian political cohesion through election interference, disinformation operations, amplification of nationalistic and anti-Western voices. This was noticed in the 2024 elections. Romanian officials documented surges in fake news narratives designed to inflame ethnic divides, question NATO's values, and stir distrust in Western institutions. These weren't bots from far away. They were finely tuned Romanian language narratives crafted to fracture unity and paralyze political consensus. It is no longer enough for Romania to invest in tanks. It must invest in resilience, media literacy, cyber defense, and counter-propaganda strategies. Because as Russia sees it, every crack in the democratic armor is an opportunity to strike. And so emerges the real Black Sea doctrine. Not just about deploying hardware, not just about hosting allies, but about accepting this truth. Romania is now a key flank state, and flank states don't get to blink. It must now think like a fortress, act like a front line, and fight a war that hasn't fully started yet, but never quite stops. And in NATO's new geometry, it is Romania's task to hold the southeastern line. Not alone, but never passively. And now let's head to Poland. They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it does sometimes rhyme. And in Warsaw, the echoes are now thunder. You have steel echoes, turret echoes, and even budget echoes. If Romania is NATO's Black Sea rampart, then Poland is the battering ram. 2025, a tectonic shift in Polish defense. A quantum leap in deterrence that turns Europe's geographic middleweight into a military heavyweight. All driven by one hard lesson. Ukraine was caught preparing for yesterday's war. Poland has no desire to do the same. Let's start with the wallet. In 2022, Poland's defense spending hovered around 2.4 to 2.7 of GDP, already above NATO average. And in 2025, it is set to hit 4.7% of its GDP. The final target? 5% of GDP by 2026. To put things into perspective, the United States itself hovers at around 3.5%. Germany is still struggling to hit 2%. Most European NATO members are barely above the threshold. But Poland is sprinting ahead of the pack, alone if it must. And the sprint is powered by a record defense budget of 187 billion in Polish zloty in 2025. Officials are blunt. This is the largest military build-up since the Cold War, and it's not for show, it's for national survival. First up, tanks. In August 2025, Poland signed its second contract with South Korea's Hyundai Rotem for 180 new K2 Black Panther tanks, adding to the 180 already ordered in 2022. The price tag? $6.5 billion. But this isn't just about delivery, it's about domestic production. At least 61 of those tanks will be assembled in the Gliwice plant, tying Polish labor to Korean technology. By 2030, Warsaw plans to field over 1,000 modern main battle tanks, a mix of K2s and American M1 Abrams. Let that number sink in. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, and Italy for that matter, all of them combined field fewer than 800 operational tanks. Poland alone is aiming for 1,100 plus. And that's not all. Hundreds of K9 Thunder self-propelled howitzers are on their way from Korea. Infantry fighting vehicles as well. Drones, MLRS platforms. It's not a build-up, it's a reshaping of Poland's land forces into a 21st century juggernaut. As one military analyst wrote, Romania already has 377 tanks, and Poland will soon have over 1100, outclassing any Western European army. This isn't just about deterring a Russian column. It's about telling Moscow, try to roll west and we'll flatten you before you reach our borders. Then there's the Abrams factor. Poland is acquiring 366 M1 Abrams tanks from the United States, 250 of them in the most advanced M1A2 SAP V3 configuration. The first batches arrived in 2023. Deliveries continue this year. But Warsaw didn't stop at buying. In Poznan, Poland has partnered with the United States and the General Dynamics Company to build the Abrams Regional Sustainment Center, a NATO-wide hub for maintenance, repairs, parts, logistics, and eventually co-production. This isn't just a workshop, it's a strategic artery, not just for Polish Abrams, but for United States Army units deployed in Poland and for future Abrams operators across Europe at large. This move plants Poland firmly in the heart of NATO's heavy armor ecosystem, and here's the quiet part few are saying out loud. Poland is also eyeing 800 plus additional Abrams on its long-term wish list. If fulfilled, this would make Poland the largest Abrams operator outside the United States in history. Let's call it for what it is. Poland is not just buying tanks, it's becoming the tank factory itself. And then there's the sky. Starting September 2025, Poland will host the first ever NATO F-35 deployment on its eastern front. The Netherlands and Norway are rotating in F-35A squadrons to operate from Polish air bases under direct NATO command. Their mission: to shield the Rezov corridor, which is the primary supply line into the Ukraine, to deter Russian air missile threats edging closer to Polish territory, and to project power over the Suwalki Gap, Kaliningrad, and Belarusian border zones. This isn't just symbolic, this is stealth, sensor fusion, real-time command. The F-35 after all doesn't just fly, it sees and shares what it sees with everything from Patriot batteries to HIMARS launchers. Analysts call this the air shield doctrine. 24/7 operations, joint Dutch-Norwegian crews, integrated with AWACS, SAM networks and battlefield radar. And as one expert puts it, the F-35s represent a much greater air defense and intelligence capability at a time when Russia is sending up to 700 drones and missiles at night against the Ukraine. This isn't just about flexing muscles, it's about building bone. The new Polish doctrine is brutal in its logic. They want to outmatch, outgun and outlast. And it has turned Poland from a buffer zone into a deterrent power, from a country that once relied on others to one that others now rely upon. In the words of a senior NATO planner, if Ukraine is the battlefield, Poland is the warehouse, the fortress and the fuse. This is NATO's new eastern front line. And Poland is its iron core. But let's discuss a bit EU and NATO coordination. So far, we've seen national determination, Poland's armor, Romania's doctrine. But what makes it real, what makes it durable, isn't just local resolve. It's systemic integration. Hard power needs a highway, deterrence needs logistics, and NATO needs Europe to move as one. 2025 delivered that movement, and it started in The Hague. At NATO's mid-2025 summit, leaders gathered not to celebrate the old, but to raise the stakes. There, in a city of treaties and tribunals, came a new doctrine of burden sharing, the Hague Defense Investment Plan. For decades, the benchmark was 2% of GDP for defense, a number often quoted but rarely honored. Now the bar has been raised to 5% of GDP, long-term, binding and strategic. Within that 5% GDP, we have the following components. 3.5% must go to core military capabilities, combat forces, equipment readiness, and research and development. The remaining 1.5% covers cyber, infrastructure, logistics, and resilience. Even countries like Spain and Belgium, long skeptical, signed on, albeit begrudgingly. Why? Because this time the pressure wasn't just American, it came from inside the house. NATO's new Secretary General Mark Rutte, the former Dutch Prime Minister, stood at the podium and made it plain. All allies are united that we must step up to stay safe. He credited the idea to President Donald J. Trump. The US, by the way, already spends near 5% if you count infrastructure and intelligence. But this summit was different. It wasn't about the United States carrying the load. It was about Europe agreeing to carry itself. And this political mandate will shape defense budgets into the 2030s. Not just for show, but for actual warfighting. You have ammo stockpiles, drone factories, radar networks, tank production, naval hardening. This is not just insurance, it's industrial mobilization wrapped in a diplomatic suit. But even money needs movement. And that's where the European Union steps in. Brussels is finalizing a 18 billion euro plan, that is almost 19.7 billion US dollars for our American listeners, to modernize roads, rail bridges, tunnels and ports across the continent. Why? Because in the real world, a tank is only as useful as the bridge it crosses. And right now, hundreds of bridges across Europe can't even support a 70-ton main battle tank. Rail lines too narrow, tunnels too low, customs too slow. That's changing. The Military Mobility Initiative will upgrade 500 strategic nodes from west to east. Corridors run through Germany, Poland, the Baltics and down to Romania and Bulgaria. The precise routes are classified, of course, but the intent isn't. The aim is simple to understand. It's to move a brigade in hours, not in weeks. To reinforce the Suwalki Gap by rail, not by prayer. To supply the Black Sea flank without bureaucratic gridlock. As EU Transport Commissioner Apostolos Tsikostas quipped, we want to avoid tanks being stuck in paperwork. Smart man. By 2025, ground has already broken. Co-founded with NATO and national governments, this dual-use infrastructure will serve both civilian and military needs, and in crisis, it becomes NATO's lifeline. But what's the use of a mobile force if it runs out of gas? At The Hague, Allied leaders approved the blueprint for the Eastern European Pipeline System, or the EEPS. It's a bold extension of NATO's Central Europe Pipeline System, which already spans 5,700 kilometers across the west. The EEPS will push this network east, connecting Poland, the Baltic states, and Southeast Europe into a single underground fuel grid. Hardened and resistant to air attacks. No more tanker convoys vulnerable to drone swarms. No more bottlenecks on the front. This 21 billion euro project, co-financed by NATO and the EU and the European Union, will feature underground fuel depots, hardened pump stations, dual-use aviation pipelines capable of carrying sustainable fuels, and coverage that reaches every forward-deployed airbase and brigade. In peacetime, it helps fuel airports and civilian hubs, but in wartime, it becomes Europe's war-fighting aorta. And remember, air operations consume 85% of fuel in combat. Without the system, NATO's air umbrella can't hold, but with it, it flies forever. But the most underreported shift in 2025 isn't in fuel or in steel. It is in governance. For the first time since Russia's full-scale invasion of the Ukraine, NATO and EU ambassadors sat in the same room at the same table and planned together. On the 28th of May 2025, Brussels hosted a joint session of NATO's North Atlantic Council and the EU's Political and Security Committee. The agenda was clear: to combine military aid to the Ukraine, to expand joint training, and to coordinate industrial production, and align logistics across institutions. This was more than symbolic, it was unprecedented strategic fusion. Under the banner of 74 joint action items, NATO and the EU are now collaborating across cyber defense, counter-hybrid warfare, military mobility, and rapid response exercises. No more silos, no more Brussels to Brussels rivalry. Just integration forged by necessity. As Lithuania's president put it, we stand together as Europeans and we play as a team with the United States. The headlines tend to focus on tanks and jets, but make no mistake, this is the scaffolding of a continental war machine. The Hague Summit, the 18 billion euro in concrete and steel, the underground arteries of jet fuel, the deepest EU-NATO coordination in history. This isn't bureaucracy, it's war planning disguised as infrastructure. And the message to Moscow: the West is not just reacting, it's preparing, and this time the rail cars will roll before the first shot is fired. But now let's discuss the geopolitical implications. Sometimes the story isn't in the deployments or the doctrine. Sometimes it's in the silence before the siren, the flutter of a drone's wings before it crashes into foreign soil. Welcome to Lithuania, July 2025, a state on edge, a border constantly scanned, and one stray drone away from escalation. On July 28, Lithuanian air defense radar picked up a Shahed-class Geran 2 drone, the same Iranian design Russia has used relentlessly in the Ukraine. This one, it veered off course. It carried 2 kilograms of explosives and it crashed nearly 100 kilometers inside Lithuanian territory. No casualties were reported, but that's not the point. 2 weeks earlier, on July 10th, another Russian drone crossed into Lithuanian airspace, triggering air raid alerts and forcing national leadership into bomb shelters for the first time since the Cold War. Lithuanian intelligence assessed both drones were intended for Ukraine, but veered wildly off path. Vilnius wasn't interested in excuses. Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys made it clear, this must not be only Lithuania's responsibility. We are defending the eastern NATO flank. That's a formal request for enhanced NATO air defenses, which was filed within hours. The concern is no longer theoretical, it's kinetic. The Supreme Allied Commander Europe has acknowledged the breach and is authorized to deploy counter-UAV systems, radars, radar upgrades and early warning infrastructure to reinforce the Baltics. And it's happening fast. Mobile counter-drone batteries, signal jamming systems and short-range interceptors are now being fast-tracked into Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. Not in response to war, but in anticipation of it. Because even a stray drone is a probe, and probes are just the prelude. Meanwhile, the German army has crossed a different border, at least politically speaking. On May 22, 2025, Germany deployed its first permanent combat brigade abroad since the Second World War. That is 4,800 troops and 200 support staff. Leopard 2 tanks, Puma infantry fighting vehicles and full-spectrum combat assets. The unit? The 35th Armored Brigade of the Bundeswehr. The location, Lithuania. Chancellor Friedrich Merz called it a historic deployment, not just of troops but of German doctrine itself. For decades the Bundeswehr was postured for defense at home. Now it defends NATO's front line on foreign soil under German command. The message is unmistakable. We will treat an attack on Vilnius as we would an attack on Berlin. The deployment is part of a long-term plan to reach full operational capability by 2027, with rotation schedules, permanent barracks, and prepositioned equipment already underway. This isn't just about one brigade, it's about Germany's pivot east. Merz didn't mince words. We must dramatically expand European defenses against hostile Russia, he said. Berlin also committed to meeting NATO's 5% defense spending goal, with 3.5% for military hardware and 1.5% for infrastructure by the early 2030s, and it's backing the promise with concrete, with armor, and with boots on the ground in the Baltic. So what does this all mean when the biggest economy in Europe stations troops permanently on Russia's border? When drones crash over Vilnius, when air sirens replace policy debates, it means the tripwire era is over. It means NATO's eastern line is no longer symbolic, it's steel, and it means that the geography of deterrence has changed. Today, it isn't just about readiness, it's about presence, and the presence has a price. And now, let's discuss everybody's favorite segment, the big picture. So what does this all mean? Why would it matter that Poland's building more tanks than France, or that Romania's air bases are buzzing with multinational rotations? Why should you care that Lithuania sounds air raid sirens in peacetime, or that Germany, the economic heart of Europe, now keeps an armored brigade on the edge of a forest that used to be basically a no man's land? Well, because the map has shifted, dear listeners. But more importantly, the mindset has shifted with the map. For the first time in decades, Europe is not just waiting for the next war, it's actively preparing for it. And that changes everything. The eastern flank is no longer a buffer, it's a bastion. And Poland is now NATO's armored core. Romania is the airbase of the Black Sea. The Baltics? Well, they're no longer exposed, they're entrenched. But this transformation didn't come from optimism. This is not the let's sing Kumbaya and hold hands kind of exercise. It came from the hard lessons of Bucha, of Mariupol and of the Donbass, and from the realization that if Russia breaks Ukraine, it doesn't stop there. That's what this is all about. This isn't just about Moscow. It's about contingency in an age of collapsing order. Because even if Russia pauses, others are watching. China's eyeing Taiwan hungrily. Iran is testing red lines. You have terror cells, insurgents, cyber cartels. So NATO's build-up isn't just about the war, and not just about this war in particular. It's about the world that's coming after it. A world where alliances are tested not by treaties but by who's already standing on the rampart when the warning comes. And now, for the first time in generations, Eastern Europe is at that rampart. Let's sum it all up. The summed up big picture is the following. The 5% spending pledge isn't just a number, it's the floor of a new reality. The tanks and jets aren't symbols, they're systems for survival. The infrastructure, the pipelines, the fuel logistics, that's not bureaucracy, that's contingency planning at the continental scale. And the political will to carry this, well, it's no longer just American. It's European, it's Polish. I'm proud to say that it's also Romanian. It's Baltic, it's French, it's German. It's European at large. After all, dear listeners, the world is entering a new era where hard power will define soft borders, where the edge of the map isn't the margin, it's the front line of civilization. And in 2025, it is Eastern Europe that holds that line. Not as a buffer, but as a bulwark. Eastern Europe's new reality is no longer hypothetical. It's not an academic exercise, it's not a war game, it's not some sort of projection. It's here. From the Black Sea to the Baltic, NATO's eastern flank has shifted from strategic grey zone to active red line. Brigades aren't rotating, they're anchoring. F-35s don't just patrol, they map and strike. And Europe's bridges, pipelines and rail yards are no longer civilian only. They're part of a militarized nervous system hardwired for rapid reinforcement. This is deterrence before disaster. A posture not of provocation, but of preparation. And in preparation, Romania, Poland, Lithuania and others have become the backbone of Europe's defenses. I'm afraid to say that the years ahead will test more than budgets. They will test social willpower, speed, cohesion, political will, and whether all this steel and doctrine can translate into something real, something which holds when tested. But this much is no longer in doubt. The center of gravity for European defense has moved east, and the ones who live there, including myself, well, we're not blinking, we're building. So stay tuned, we'll be tracking NATO's evolution, Eastern Europe's rearmament, and the broader strategic chessboard as it unfolds. If you found today's deep dive useful, informative, or even provocative, subscribe. Share it with somebody who still thinks the Cold War ended in 1991 and believes that saying that, oh no, the Russians will stop at Ukraine. Thank you for listening, and as always, I have been your host, Alex Krishan, and this has been Realpolitik Confidential, where we trade noise for signal and spin for structure. Remember our motto, less ideology, more analysis, and as always, stay safe out there.